Discover 3 spine-chilling true camping horrors, unexplained terror revealed in haunted wilderness. Jacob and Lisa were an ordinary suburban couple, trapped in the grind of Seattle life. Their kids, Emma and Noah, needed a break just as much as they did. Desperate for relief, they packed their car for a weekend camping trip in the lush Pacific Northwest, hoping laughter would drown out the weight of their stress. As they set up their tent beneath towering pines, roasting hot dogs over a crackling fire, the perfect American family scene unfolded. But unbeknownst to them, the serene beauty of the forest concealed an ominous undercurrent waiting to strike. As dusk fell, shadows grew long and their cheerful chatter dwindled. A sinister rustle in the underbrush made Jacob's heart race. Just wildlife, he told his family, dismissing their unease. It's part of the adventure. Yet, the atmosphere thickened, whispers seemed to curl around the firelight as Emma and Noah recounted local legends. Tales of spirits protecting the land, warnings of what lay ahead. Jacob rolled his eyes. Lisa's anxious glances toward the encroaching darkness spoke volumes. When the children snuggled tight in their sleeping bags, Jacob caught a flicker of movement on the fringes of their campsite. A dark figure shifted, always just beyond his focus, sitting heavily on his chest as he strained to see. Shaking off the cold sweat trickling down his spine, he turned to his sleeping family, longing for their safety more than ever. But when they woke to find all their food mysteriously gone, a rotten pit of panic lodged deeply in their stomachs. How would they survive now? Morning broke with urgency. They needed to hike to the ranger station, a mere mile away. Surrounded by towering trees, the unnatural silence pressed down on them, amplifying every sound: the crunch of leaves underfoot, the alarming caw of a hawk. It's just the forest, Jacob reassured, though doubt crept in. Yet hope pushed them onwards. Hope shattered when they approached the ranger station and found it abandoned, a ghostly shell of its former self. Torn, tattered posters warned of lurking dangers. Frantic scrawlings hinted at previous campers who had vanished. Their light-hearted trip now shifted to a desperate escape. Maybe we should go back, Lisa whispered, trembling. Jacob felt the fraying thread of their courage. With each step, he sensed a deceptive presence and eyes watching from the shadows, pulsing danger closer. He urged his family back toward their campsite, hearts racing. The woods felt malicious now, the trees closing in to reveal a living, breathing entity intent on their doom. Just as they neared their clearing, a blood-curdling scream sliced through the trees, expanding the distance between hope and terror. The family froze. Panic coursed through their veins like ice as the whispering forest loomed larger. Would they hold on to their grip on reality, or would they become the forest's next victims? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the family huddled together, shivers ran down their spines, realizing they were no longer the ones in control. The echo of fear spiraled through their minds. What was that scream? Emma whimpered, eyes wide with terror. Unseen, ungraspable threats loomed in the shadows. The forest was alive and hunting. Would they find a way out before it swallowed them whole, or would they become another ghost story whispered around campfires, lost to the chilling embrace of the haunted wilderness? A heavy silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Jacob felt the chill bite through his skin, an icy breath whispering against the back of his neck. We need to move, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Lisa nodded, her eyes darting, searching the depths of the shadowy woods that seemed to pulsate with dark intentions. With hesitant steps, they edged toward their campsite, hearts pounding like war drums. Each cracking twig felt like a gunshot in the eerie stillness. Jacob remembered the stories he'd scoffed at only hours before. Every shadow now held the echo of that piercing scream. Where is it coming from? Noah asked, voice trembling. Jacob's jaw clenched. Stay close, okay? He kept moving, but the forest felt alive, pulsating with something ancient and predatory. As they reached their tent, they found it standing eerily still, an ominous reminder of their ignorance. The forgotten fire pit still held the damp ashes of their previous night's laughter, now starkly juxtaposed against the terror permeating their reality. Jacob scanned the site, looking for any signs of the dark figure he had glimpsed before. Was it just his mind playing tricks, or was there really something lurking, unseen? Suddenly, another scream shattered the thick veil of dread. A different voice, shrill and desperate. Emma clutched Lisa's hand, eyes wide, her small body trembling. "Mom, I'm scared." The innocence in her voice twisted Jacob's heart into knots, and he fought against the rising tide of panic threatening to consume him. Fighting his instinctive urge to flee, Jacob knelt down to his children's level. "Listen," he said, trying to instill a sense of calm that he didn't really feel. "We'll stick together. We're going to be okay." But even as he spoke, he could feel the truth slipping away, like sand through his fingers. They decided to investigate the source of the scream, a foolhardy notion that gnawed at Jacob's judgment. Each step further into the unnerving silence felt like pushing his family deeper into danger. The trees closed in around them, and the chill deepened. "Look!" Lisa pointed to the ground, trembling. Fresh tracks marred the forest floor, large footprints that didn't seem human. Jacob's stomach twisted. They weren't alone. Panic crackled through the group as they realized the implications of what they were following. "Maybe we should head back," Jacob suggested hurriedly, glancing around as if expecting something to leap from the shadows. As they turned, a rustling erupted from the brush nearby. A low growl, primal and hungry, echoed into their ears. Their fear paralyzed them, but the urge to flee kicked in, and they sprinted back towards the tent. Jacob's heart raced, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The trees seemed to lean in, entangling them in their branches as if participating in a twisted game of survival, but just when they thought they were safe, that blood-curdling scream returned, closer this time. It echoed in Jacob's ears, a sound of pure despair. He looked toward his family, ready to shout for them to keep running, but terror held him, rooting him to the ground. What if it's someone out there?" Noah stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "Stay back," Jacob commanded as the ground beneath them trembled, and from between the trees, the dark figure emerged with haunting familiarity, a twisted reflection of despair that had once been part of this wilderness, now risen against them. As the figure stepped into the faint light, Jacob's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't just a reflection of dread, it was the embodiment of their darkest fears woven together into a chilling visage. Would they confront the terror together, or succumb to the chaos? The woods waited, eagerly anticipating their next move, ready to swallow them whole. What would they find deep within the forest next? Jacob's heart thundered in his chest as the figure stepped closer, its silhouette wavering like a mirage in the dark. Shadows twisted around it, making it blend in with the night. He had to protect his family, but the weight of fear lodged in his throat, choking his instinct to spring into action. "Back," he hissed, gripping Noah's shoulder tightly. The woods responded to their terror, enveloping them in eerie stillness, as if the very ground held its breath. "Dad, what is it?" Noah's voice quivered, breaking the silence more than any scream could. Emotions surged, ripping through Jacob's facade. His steady hold on courage threatened to unravel. The figure stilled, its hollow eyes locking onto Jacob's. An uncanny recognition simmered within him. This wasn't an unknown terror, it was a twisted version of everything he had ever feared. A distorted reflection of pain, anger, and despair surfaced in that fleeting moment. A guardian turned predator. Emma clutched Lisa's hand tighter, her tiny fingernails digging into her palm. "I want to go home," she whispered. The innocence in her voice pierced Jacob's heart, urging him to do something. Without thinking, Jacob stepped forward. "We don't want trouble. Just let us go." His voice faltered, revealing the fear that bubbled beneath his demands. To his horror, the figure cocked its head, letting out a low growl that reverberated through the trees. It was a sound that sent chills cascading down Jacob's spine, raw and primal. In its presence, the forest felt old, too old. Was it their surroundings or an ancient creature that had lived through centuries of abandonment and hurt? Suddenly, the rustling grew louder. Jacob felt the ground shake beneath him, branches snapping with unseen force. The shadows began to writhe, and he grasped the reality. This wasn't the forest's darkness that haunted them, it was drawn to them, feeding on their fear, their hopelessness. "Run! Now!" Jacob bellowed. The urgency in his voice cut through the emotional fog that had paralyzed them. He turned towards the path leading back to the tent, the sickening feeling of being hunted pulsating in his veins. They sprinted, branches clawing at their clothes. The figure roared behind them, a terrible sound that coiled around their hearts like a vice. Panic pushed them forward, but every so often, Jacob glanced back, desperate for a glimpse of what trailed them through the blackened woods. "Don't look back!" Lisa cried, terror making her voice sharp. Yet their instincts battled as curiosity gnawed at the edges of their minds. What was that creature? What did it want? As they neared the campsite, the flickering light of their lanterns beckoned like a false beacon of hope. Jacob's pulse quickened. The tent felt like a sanctuary, yet a trap at the same time. "Get inside!" he shouted, shoving the kids towards the tent. They dove in like frantic rabbits, but Jacob lingered just outside for a moment longer. The underbrush rustled violently. The figure was still close, the stench of decay seeping into the air like oil. He slammed the zipper shut behind him, sealing them in darkness as the terror outside hovered just beyond the thin fabric. The group huddled together, hearts pounding in synchrony, drowning in silence deeper than night itself. "What is that thing?" Noah whispered, his voice shaking. For a moment, Jacob's resolve faltered. I don't know," he finally admitted. The darkness outside seemed to listen, absorbing their fear, then abetted briefly as if weighing its options. A sudden crash shattered the night. Something had moved beyond the tent. What was that? Emma squeaked, eyes wide with terror. Just then, whispers began, quiet but intentional, rising and falling in a language they couldn't understand. Each syllable dripped with malice as the darkness crawled closer. Jacob swallowed hard, adrenaline spiking as he peered through the tent, half expecting the worst. But what he saw made his blood run cold. The woods were not just still, shadows danced with malevolent purpose, their shapes writhing and morphing, playing tricks on his mind. "Forget it!" he gasped, ripping the fabric apart, shoving his family to the corners of the tent. "We need to find a weapon." But in the dim light, he noticed something protruding from the darkness, the unmistakable outline of a smiling face within the shadows, not just lurking in the woods anymore. They had crossed a threshold. The entity was now here with them. What did it want from them? And as the whispers grew louder, would they still have a chance to escape at all? The moment Jacob tore the tent fabric apart, a suffocating darkness poured in, thick and heavy like a blanket soaked in cold sweat. His instincts screamed to flee, but terror rooted him to the spot. The smiling face loomed larger, grotesque yet fascinating, its teeth glinting like shards of glass in the faint light. What is that?" Noah gasped, his voice barely a whisper. Jacob forced himself to step back, his breath quickening. "Stay behind me," he commanded, though a part of him felt breakable, like the fraying thread of a worn-out rope. The whispers intensified, swirling around them, the voices mixing into a chilling choir that pierced through his core. They spoke of loss, betrayal, and heart-wrenching sorrow. Jacob's heart began to race in syncopation with the sounds, each note striking a chord of fear. Sudden movement snapped Jacob's attention back to the grinning face. It appeared closer now, impossibly so, as if the shadows moved at the speed of his terror. What kind of nightmare could twist reality like this? Questions spiraled through his mind, but answers felt too distant. "Jacob!" Lisa cried, her voice trembling, breaking his reverie. Her eyes were wide, darting around as if searching for an escape route. He turned, heart racing, and grabbed a nearby flashlight. It felt heavy in his hand, its light flickering like his diminishing hope. "Can we fight it?" Noah whimpered, holding Emma tightly. "It's not us we need to fight," Jacob replied, the gravity of his words sinking in. If the entity thrived on fear and despair, they were unwittingly feeding it. "Then what?" Noah asked, and Jacob's gaze darkened. "I don't know, but we need to hold on to hope." The shadows responded, swirling violently, darker figures emerging behind the grotesque visage. They writhed and twisted, revealing forked arms and elongated limbs, all adorned with that same, sickening smile. Jacob's body recoiled, instinctively urging him to shield his family from whatever darkness approached. "Don't look into their eyes," he shouted, briskly redirecting his own gaze to the corner of the tent, spaces void of those haunting smiles. A sense of urgency mounted, so relentless that it clawed at his throat. "Jacob!" Lisa's shaky voice cracked as the shadows slid closer, blood-curdling whispers curdling in their ears. Suddenly, the lantern flickered violently before dimming, plunging them into semi-darkness. Panic enveloped Jacob as he fumbled for the lighter he always kept in his pocket. He needed light, the kind that could cut through the encroaching terror. He struck it, the small flame casting shadows that danced in wild abandon. The entity halted, recoiling as if burned. Its indifferent smile twisted into a snarl, and the whispers turned into shrieks vehement and anguished, each note laced with longing that scraped against Jacob's mind. "Run!" he urged, igniting the lighter's flame toward the darkening figures. But the embers of hope were, scant and flickering, threatening to burn out at any moment. "Where?" Emma squeaked, clutching at her mother's leg. "Anywhere but here," Jacob yelled as the shadows lunged, their whispers spiraling out of control, a cacophony of despair crashing in with violent force. As the shadows surged, the lighter flickered dangerously, but Jacob felt it an ethereal pull toward the exit of the tent. The sunlight outside, though far, beckoned him like a promise. "Follow me," he shouted again, planting his feet firmly. He pushed open the flaps, guilt and dread pooling in his gut. But crossing the threshold felt like stepping into a different world. The laughter outside didn't match the chaos inside. Their campsite sat still, eerily serene, untouched by the terror they had spiraled into. Confusion clawed at Jacob's thoughts. "Why is it quiet?" Noah whispered, tears streaking down his dirt-smeared cheeks. And then they saw it, a shadow looming not behind them but ahead. Another figure, different, watching them with the same vacant smile. "What does it want?" Lisa's sobs echoed in the ravaged silence. Was it watching them? Waiting? Jacob's heart sank, dread unfurling deep within him. Whatever this was, it wasn't done with them. Not yet. "Run!" Jacob screamed, fear thrumming in his veins as he propelled his family forward. But as they bolted into the woods, each breath felt heavier, the shadows stretching towards them, eager for the darkness within. They needed to figure out what this thing wanted, or they might just become a part of its grotesque smile. The forest thickened, enveloping them like a suffocating shroud, and as branches grasped at their limbs, a single thought blared in Jacob's mind: they needed answers. But where could they find them, when everything around them twisted in malice? Branches cracked underfoot as they dashed deeper into the woods, their breaths heavy and labored. The peaceful chirping of birds had vanished, replaced by an unsettling silence. Each rustle of leaves sent shards of panic racing down Jacob's spine. He could feel those vacant smiles lingering at the edges of his vision, waiting, watching, hungry. "Faster!" he urged, his voice sharper than intended. Lisa stumbled, pulling Emma along as Noah kept pace, his eyes wide with fear. The air turned colder, a biting chill that seeped into their bones. Jacob's disorientation swirled with confusion and desperation. What was that smile? Was it an illusion, or were they mad to think they weren't safe out here? He could nearly hear the laughter of the figure from the campsite, echoing like a ghostly taunt. "Jacob, where are we going?" Lisa's voice cracked, her face pale. The panic pressed against him. They had no clear path, no understanding of the dark woods that now felt like a maze closing in. Just keep moving. We'll find a way out." He shouted back, but doubt gnawed at him. They stumbled upon an old, dilapidated cabin, its once bright paint now peeling and faded under a blanket of oppressive vines. Jacob's heart raced at the sight. Maybe they could hold up inside, barricade the door. He reached for the handle, hoping against hope that safety lay within, but as the door creaked open, the foul odor of mildew struck him like a punch. Flicking the lighter to brighten the cramped space, he peered inside. The shadows darted away from the flame, retreating into dark corners, yet the remnants of forgotten life circled them like vultures. Expectation thickened the air as a chilling dread settled onto his shoulders. "No," Emma whimpered, pulling back. "I don't want to go in there." "It's just a cabin," Jacob attempted to reassure her, but fear gripped him too. He stepped inside, his heart clanging against his ribs. Noah followed with a hesitant step, and Lisa brought up the rear, glancing nervously over her shoulder. The moment they stilled, the whispers returned, softer but insistent. Jacob felt them wrap around him, prying at his thoughts, promising something terrible would happen if they allowed fear to take root. He pressed the lighter close to his chest, its small flame a fragile lifeline in the gloom. "Shut the door," Jacob urged, his voice strained. "They can't get in if we block it." Noah hustled to obey, slamming it shut, but it didn't feel secure. The whispers pulsed like a heartbeat, building intensity. He realized they came from within the cabin too. A tight knot of dread formed in his stomach. In the corners, shadowy figures began to emerge, shapes formed from the darkness. "We're not alone," Lisa breathed, clutching Emma tighter, eyes darting. The shadows solidified, revealing grotesque faces mirroring that chilling smile. Jake's throat constricted as the figures pressed into view, their grins stretching wider, as if savoring the fear radiating off his family. "What do they want?" Noah's voice quivered, and Jacob met his gaze, determined but panicked. "I don't know, but we won't give in. We'll find a way to escape." But deep down, uncertainty flickered. What if this was their end? These emotions cast a heavy shade over reason, every breath laced with terror, every second stretching into eternity. The cabin's walls suddenly groaned as if alive, a sentience lurking just beyond their understanding. Jacob faced the growing shadows, heart racing. That's when he noticed it, a small, cracked mirror hanging crooked on the wall. Its glass was clouded, but Jacob felt drawn to it, an unexpected glimmer in the darkness. He reached out, breath caught in his throat, forcing down the apprehension rising like bile. "Jacob, don't!" Lisa shouted, her fear igniting a primal urge to resist, but what truth awaited behind the veil of that foggy glass? Could it reveal how to banish their tormentors? The shadows whispered even louder, swirling with fury, gripping the air with a bitter cold, each voice an echo of despair and longing. And in that moment, as Jacob's fingers brushed the mirror's surface, he felt a spark of prophecy, a glimpse into a horror deeper than he imagined. He hesitated, heart drumming wildly. What awaited him on the other side? The shadows surged, a tangible wave ready to crash down upon them. This is it, he thought, knowing they had no choice left but to confront the horrors lurking just beneath the surface. What lay in the depths of that mirror? What would it reveal about the darkness chasing them? Jacob's fingers pressed against the glass, and a chill rippled through him like ice water. The shadows recoiled in confusion, their grins faltering as the mirror's surface began to shimmer. He felt drawn deeper, as if something behind that foggy barrier was calling to him. The whispers escalated, each syllable piercing his mind like daggers. "Jacob, step back!" Noah shouted, his voice slicing through the frenzy. Fear colored Noah's face, eyes wide with terror, yet there was an urgency in his tone that wouldn't let go, but Jacob was entranced, unable to break free from the mirror's grip. Images started to surface, visions flashing like strobe lights. He saw the woods, the campsite, and the very shadows that tormented them. The smiling faces transformed into familiar ones, faces he thought he could trust. "Stop it! Don't look!" Lisa screamed, clutching Emma closely, her voice breaking. Emma's eyes gleamed with innocent terror as she buried her face in her mother's shoulder. With a sudden rush of clarity, Jacob jerked his hand back just as an echoing laugh reverberated from the depths of the mirror, a sound drenched in malice. The air shifted, charged with an unholy presence that seemed ready to spill through the cracks of reality. "They're coming for us." Noah's panic escalated as he stumbled backward, colliding with the door. The shadows at the edges of the cabin shifted, converging toward him, their gaping mouths yawning wide as if tasting the fear in the room. Jacob ripped his gaze away from the mirror. It was taking too much. "We have to leave. Now." He pushed past the looming darkness, urging Lisa and Emma ahead. Noah joined them, his breath rushing in swift bursts. The air felt heavier, closing around them like a vice, the whispers clawing at their minds with frantic insistence. As they ran toward the door, it slammed open unexpectedly, revealing a wave of darkness that flooded through the gap. Jacob barely had time to react before a chilling draft wrapped around him, like icy fingers clutching his throat. They stumbled back, the cabin feeling less like a haven and more like a trap. "No. Close the door," Lisa cried as she fought against the darkness sliding into their sanctuary, but it pushed against the wood as though it could will the entrance open. Jacob swung the heavy door shut, slamming it with all his strength. They pressed against it, hearts racing, hoping it would hold. The whispers harmonized into a chaotic crescendo, their sinister tones echoing off the walls, bouncing off the shadows that danced ominously, threatening to pierce through their fragile barrier. "Find something to block it," Jacob shouted, scanning the room. Old furniture littered the floor, stacks of rotting books, broken chairs, anything might serve to fortify their only escape. "Over here," Noah cried, hauling a weathered coffee table, scraping it against the floor. As they wrestled the table into place, Jacob felt the walls pulse violently. The shadows, spurred by their resistance, surged forward, swirling with anger. Faces pressed against the wood, mouths moving, their smiling eyes wide. "Please, please don't let them in," Emma whimpered, creating an ache in Jacob's chest that mixed dread with protectiveness. He turned in time to see the mirror's surface ripple again. Behind its glass, a horrific visage stared back, a grotesque twist of their own features. The smile widened, teeth now sharp, ready to devour everything in its path. "Watch out!" Noah screamed as a shadow lunged through the door, fingers like claws reaching out. Jacob shoved it aside just in time, but the force of the shadows pushed back, threatening to wash over them. They were running out of time. "Get to the back. There must be another way out," Jacob urged, panic threading through his voice. They darted toward the rear of the cabin, nausea gripping him with each step as the whispers morphed into cries, begging for release. The weight of despair bore down, pulling them into darkness. "Jacob!" "The mirror!" Lisa cried, her voice rising over the fluctuating chaos. "What if it's the key?" He turned toward the object, uncertainty gnawing at him inside. Was it their salvation or their doom? The mirror trembled now, revealing a glimpse of a place beyond the shadows, a space that flickered with dim light intertwined with the truth of their torment. It called to him once more, offering something hope. The shadows howled, surging as if sensing his hesitation, and Jacob felt the hairs on his neck rise with urgency. Could he trust it? Or was it destined to lead them deeper into darkness? With breath caught between fear and resolve, he moved toward the mirror, ready to face whatever awaited him on the other side, willing to gamble it all for one last chance. What truth lay hidden beneath the surface, waiting for him to uncover? And would it be enough to save them from the encroaching shadows? The mirror's surface shimmered again, pulling Jacob closer. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, drowning out the frantic whispers, the shrieks that felt like they were reaching into his very soul. He hesitated just a moment longer, straddling the line between light and dark. The shadows writhed like snakes, desperate to drag him in. "No!" Noah shouted, gasping for breath. "Don't! It wants you." "But what if it's our only chance?" Jacob argued, his voice trembling. The faces inside the mirror twisted and turned, a parade of grotesque mockeries. For a fleeting second, he thought he saw his own reflection smiling back at him with a longing he didn't understand. "Jacob, we don't know what it is," Lisa cried, pulling on his arm. The sound of wood splintering reached them, followed by low growls that seemed to seep from the walls. "Here." Noah grunted, pushing a battered dresser into place against the door, but the shadows surged violently, merging into an ominous wave that threatened to engulf the cabin. The darkness lunged again, clawing at their defenses. Jacob's mind raced. They couldn't hold the door for long. Maybe the mirror was the only way out. "We need to find out what it is." Jacob snapped, stepping back, gathering his courage, every instinct screaming at him to turn and run instead. "If we don't try, they'll get us." "No. Please don't go." Emma whimpered, gripping her mother tightly. Tear-streaked, the little girl peered through the chaos and met Jacob's eyes, her innocent gaze piercing through his resolve. "I have to," Jacob whispered, more to himself than anyone else. He took a tentative step closer to the mirror, feet glued to the floor as the shadows stomped angrily on the other side. The moment his fingertips brushed the surface, a jolt of ice shot through him. Images flooded his mind, the woods from their last camping trip, only darker, the laughter of friends now twisted into horrifying wails. In one flash, he saw someone, a figure draped in shadows, reaching for him through the branches, but their face was blurred, as if obscured by a fog of nameless fear. "Jacob!" Noah said again, the panic rising in his voice like a tide. "Don't. They're just trying to trick you." But the mirror pulled him deeper, the glass swallowing him whole. In a heartbeat, he was dragged through, tumbling into an abyss that felt cold, endless, that he blasted through a veil of shadowy mist and landed hard on the damp forest floor. Chilling wind wrapped around him, filling his lungs with the scent of decay. His heart raced, beads of sweat forming along his brow. He was alone, at least, he thought he was. Panic shot through him. "Guys!" he yelled. But all that responded was the ominous rustle of leaves in the wind and low whispers that crawled around him like rapidly shifting shadows. Moving cautiously, he pushed through the dense underbrush, the moonlight barely breaking through the thick canopy. He could hear the laughter again, distant and distorted, a mocking echo of what once was. The shadows pulsed around him, crawling over the ground, tasting the air with anticipation, waiting for what he would do next. "Jacob!" A voice pierced through the darkness, Lisa's voice, tinged with dread. "Lisa! I'm here!" He shouted, uncertainty gnawing at him as he stumbled forward, but his feet stopped. In front of him stood the mirror again, only this time the surface was clarity itself, a portal glimmering with distorted images, including a reflection of Emma softly crying, her tiny face pale and terror-stricken. "No!" Jacob shrieked, reaching for the glass. It pulsated violently, the echo of laughter transforming into shrieks of agony. The shadows behind him escalated into a frenzy, twisting and howling, desperate to reclaim him. That he glanced back, the dark figures were advancing, and he figured they would reach him in seconds. "What do I do?" It was a desperate thought, but deep down, he knew he had to make a choice. Time was running out. With his heart pounding a frantic rhythm, he turned back to the mirror, feeling its pull, sensing the truth it hid but obscured by fear. Would this be salvation or another trap? In the collective chaos of the wilderness, he felt an urgency. The decision loomed. Instinctively, he stepped towards the mirror, just as the shadows lunged to claim him. Could he confront the terror on the other side? Or would it swallow him, and everyone he loved? Something was waiting there, just out of reach, the truth and the terror entwined, and Jacob knew he had to grasp it. The moment Jacob's hand connected with the mirror's surface, it felt like plunging into freezing water. He breathed in a gasp of panic, engulfed by the images swirling around him. A rush of memories flickered like a strobe light, friends laughing around the campfire, the crackling sound of firewood, and suddenly, everything distorted into a carnival of screams and shadows. That he stumbled backward, disoriented. The air was thick, almost tangible, filled with the guttural whispers of the forest. "Hello!" he yelled, his voice swallowed by the cacophony. The laughter was still there, but now it twisted into a haunting wail that made his stomach turn. Clenching his fists, he forced himself to focus. Somewhere out there, Lisa, Noah, and Emma were trying to fend off the darkness. His heart hammered like a war drum as he steadied himself. Jacob. Lisa's voice echoed through the trees, frantic and raw as he took a tentative step toward the sound, fighting against the forest's deceptive trickery. The shadows seemed alive, shifting and darting around him, hungry for his fear. It felt like being stalked, the very air crackling with impending doom that he turned, seeking the voice's origin, but the trees were oppressive, twisting and turning, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Suddenly, he tripped over something solid, a gnarled root, its surface slick with rot. He fell, hands hitting the cold ground, and as he looked down, the soil writhed beneath him, dark tendrils creeping closer, as if eager to pull him into the depths of the earth. "No! Get off!" he shouted, scrambling away. The world around him dipped into chaos, shadows undulating at the periphery of his vision, sneering at his desperation. "Jacob! Over here!" Lisa's voice again, sharper now, as if she were closer. Hope surged in his chest. He levered himself up, the fear galvanizing him forward. The whispers turned to hisses, clawing at him, accusing him of leaving his friends behind. "Please!" he called out, lungs burning. "Where are you?" Then, ahead, between two towering trees, the mirror flickered to life again, its surface now a deep, pulsing black, reflecting a scene that twisted his insides. There was Lisa, standing before it, a shadowy figure looming behind her. Her wide eyes were filled with terror, and his heart felt the darkness was reaching for her. With a surge of adrenaline, he sprinted toward her, the ground trembling beneath his feet. But before he could reach out, the shadows entwined around her, pulling her into the abyss. "Lisa!" he screamed, his voice echoing into the emptiness, desperation clawing at his throat. She vanished as the mirror distorted violently, and Jacob stumbled back, gasping. The shadows were closing in, eager to consume what remained of his sanity. What felt like eyes bore into his back, breathing heavily, whispering sins and nightmares. Panicked, he spun around. The darkness was thicker now, swirling around him in an oppressive embrace. Sweat trickled down his spine, and he could feel his bravery waning like the moon above, swallowed by clouds. There was little room for doubt. He had to decide. With no choice left, Jacob turned back to the mirror, every sense alert for danger. Only one clear thought pulsed through his mind. He had to enter, had to confront what waited. Whoever or whatever it was craved him. It was time to play its game. That he took a deep breath and plunged through the mirror as the world around him erupted into chaos. Coldness bit at his skin, and the sounds of laughter morphed into relentless screams. Would he find Lisa? Or become another lost face trapped in the void? The pull was stronger this time, blurring the lines between reality and despair. As he hurtled deeper into the darkness, he realized this mirror didn't just reflect their fears, it thrived on them. Emerging from the other side, he found himself in a twisted landscape. Shadows grew thicker, intimately aware of him, and the whispers, oh, the whispers were now his name repeated in 1,000 voices. Before him lay a clearing, eerie and silent, and at its center an altar. Shrouded in darkness. Something was waiting, but then he saw her, Emma, eyes wide and terrified. She stood there, a trembling figure facing away from him, entrapped by the ominous presence looming over her. "Emma!" he shouted, but no sound came out right, as if the air itself was conspiring against him. He took an anguished step toward her, and as he did, a low growl emanated from the shadows, warning him he was not alone. Each heartbeat echoed like thunder, foreboding and relentless. Was it too late to save her? Or were they all already trapped, woven into the fabric of something far more sinister? The next choice loomed heavy in the air, a decision that could seal their fate. Jacob's heart raced as he took another step, the growl reverberating like a sinister echo through the clearing. The altar before him was dark, its surface glistening with something that looked disturbingly like blood. Emma's back was still to him, the tension in her shoulders palpable. "Emma!" He shouted again, desperation cracking through his voice. "Turn around." But she didn't move. The growl deepened, vibrating in his bones, forcing him to make a choice. Should he rush to her, risk triggering whatever monstrosity lurked behind, or hang back and observe? The shadows seemed to pulse around him, hungry for his indecision. He took a breath, grounding himself, focusing on Emma's silhouette. There was a thin thread of connection between them, a flicker of hope that urged him closer. "Emma! I'm here." Suddenly, as if waking from a dream, she turned. Her eyes met his, wide with terror, but they were not just filled with fear, they were clouded with something deeper. There was despair, desperation, as if she were trapped in a cage of her own making. "Jacob," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of whispers that intensified, a discordant choir chanting his name. Without warning, the shadows behind her lunged forward, a black mass of writhing tendrils that snaked toward Emma. It was now or never. He sprinted through the cold air, aiming to reach her before it was too late. "Get away from her!" he yelled, launching himself into the chaos. As his fingers grazed her arm, the air around them pulsed violently, the growling morphing into a sinister laughter that seeped into his mind, warping his thoughts. Emma flinched, her eyes widened even further as if she realized something he couldn't grasp. "No!" she screamed, jerking away from him. "You can't save me, Jacob." "What?" Panic clawed at him as shadows enveloped her, wrapping around her like a deadly embrace. The darkness was thick and cold, putting an icy grip around his heart. He felt the tether between them fraying, unraveling like a worn thread. "Emma, don't do this." But her eyes were vacant, lost behind a glaze of despair. The shadows whispered to her, inviting, beckoning, promising escape from the horrors surrounding them. Desperation surged in him. "Fight it!" he begged, grasping at anything he could hold on to. But she simply shook her head, tears gleaming like shattered glass in the dim light. As if sensing his fear, the shadows surged toward him. Jacob stumbled back, his heart hammering in his chest, and a scream tore from his throat. But in that scream, a sudden clarity spiked through the layers of darkness. Maybe, just maybe, he could turn this around. The urge to flee twisted in his gut, but he resisted it. Instead, he reached into his pocket, clutching the only thing he had left, a small flashlight, barely functional but alive with a flicker of hope. He flicked it on, the weak beam cutting through the suffocating darkness, and aimed it at Emma. "This is not the end," he shouted. "You're stronger than this." The shadows recoiled, their grasp loosening slightly. Emma blinked, her focus sharpening on the light. "Jacob, I don't know if I can," but he wouldn't let her give in. The darkness howled, now agitated by the light, a churning mass of frustration. As Jacob stepped closer, keeping the beam steady, he could feel the energy shifting, the shadows twisting and howling in torment. "Stay with me. Just hold on." In a desperate act from the pit of his heart, he cried out, "We have to face this together." The words rang with an urgency, a vow that was buried deep in the fear and chaos. Suddenly, the shadows lunged, a final attempt to ensnare them, but Jacob held firm. "Together," he insisted, each word a lifeline thrown into the abyss. Emma's gaze shifted, flickering with defiance as she slowly extended her hand. The shadows screeched, fighting to pull her back, but with one swift motion, she took Jacob's hand. The moment they were connected, a blinding flash erupted, the darkness recoiling as if burned. Together, they stood against the tide of despair, holding on to their light, their breaths mingling with the growing surge of strength. But as the light grew, the altar groaned, cracking under the pressure, releasing echoes of memories, hearts broken, lives lost. In the distance, laughter melded with screams, spinning chaos into a true nightmare. Just when they thought they might escape, Jacob felt a pull of force threatening to sever their connection. The darkness was not finished. It roared, ready to claim both of them, and somewhere deep inside, he knew they were not safe yet. "Hold on!" he shouted as the ground began to tremble beneath them, the altar pulsating violently. But Emma's face morphed with an unfamiliar emotion, fear mixed with determination. Was it time to make a sacrifice? What awaited them next was unclear. Would they plunge deeper into the maw of terror, or uplift each other into salvation? As the shadows surged once again, voices clamoring for dominance, Jacob prepared himself for the unknown, a final choice that could change everything. The ground beneath them shook, and the shadows writhed with an energy that felt like a coiling serpent ready to strike. Jacob held onto Emma's hand tighter, feeling the warmth of their bond pushing back against the cold grasp of the darkness. It was a battle of wills, light against the encroaching void, and every heartbeat rang with the urgency of survival. "I won't let go!" Jacob shouted defiantly, forcing courage through his voice. They had come this far, surrendering now was not an option. The shadows surged, thrumming with power, and a deafening howl echoed through the clearing. Jacob could feel the tremor in Emma's grip, her resolve wavering. He glanced over at her, seeing fear clouding her bright eyes. "Emma, fight! Remember who you are," he urged, each word a lifeline thrown into the chaos. For a moment, doubt flickered in her gaze, and the shadows seized that moment, pulling at her with icy fingers. I can't. Emma cried, tears streaming down her cheeks, mirroring the terror swirling around them. "Yes, you can!" Jacob yelled. "We're stronger together. Focus on the light." He pointed the flashlight toward the pulsing shadows, and a beam burst forth, illuminating the crests of darkness. The laughter morphed back into agonized screams, the malevolent faces twisting with rage but unable to advance through the light. With a deep breath, Jacob connected with the inner source of strength he felt building since the beginning of this nightmare. "We are family. We fight together," he yelled, channeling every ounce of love he had for Emma. As if pulled by an unseen force, the frail fabric of their connection stretched, and Emma's shocked expression transformed into one of fierce determination. "You're right," she shouted, and something shifted within her. The shadows seemed to hesitate, sensing a change. They began to focus, together. Light spilled from Jacob's flashlight in vibrant arcs, illuminating the darkness. "Light is stronger than fear," Jacob declared. The shadows recoiled as they felt the rising force, their composite faces contorting in anger and desperation. Emma's fingers tightened around Jacob's, and together they raised the flashlight higher. "We will not be afraid," she shouted, her voice harmonizing with Jacob's in a defiant crescendo. The combined strength of their voices, their love, resonated through the woods, reverberating in a way that felt like picking a lock, a key to their worst fears. In that moment, the shadows halted before them, orbs of darkness swirling, something like confusion spread across their ghastly forms. Jacob caught Emma's eye, resolve glowing as bright as the beam piercing through the shadows. They took a step forward, courage outweighing fear. "Together!" Jacob echoed desperately, as he pushed through the swirling vortex, pulling Emma with him. Time slowed, the shadows screamed, the air thickened, and for the longest moment, he felt as if they were teetering on the brink of oblivion. But Jacob focused on the warmth radiating from Emma's hand, and suddenly, a shuddering wave of light erupted from their connection, swallowing the darkness in a blinding explosion. The shadows shrieked in agony, dissipating into thin air like smoke blown away by a gust of wind. As the brightness surged forth, Jacob felt immense weight lift from his shoulders, and Emma squeezed his hand harder until they were enveloped in pure, unyielding light. The forces of darkness screamed, shattering as light intertwined with them until nothing but silence remained. Jacob opened his eyes, and they found themselves standing in a clearing, the oppressive forest no longer looming. In front of them, their campsite glimmered in the kaleidoscope of dusk, the sun setting peacefully against gentle hills. The cool air felt safe, familiar. Did we do it?" Emma asked, all written on her face. Jacob looked into her eyes, relief flooding through him. "Yes. We did it," he breathed, his voice thick with emotion. They fell into a tight embrace, with laughter mingled with tears. The weight of fear slipped away, and in its place grew a bond they had fought to protect against overwhelming odds. Lisa and Noah appeared from the shadows on the edge of the clearing, their expressions filled with confusion and fear. But as they approached, Jacob saw the spark of appreciation, relief washing over their faces. "What just happened?" Lisa asked, her voice steadying. "Together, we faced it," Jacob replied, pride mingling with every word. "And we won." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over them, where darkness had once threatened to consume them. As they sat together, recounting their experiences, the forest, once oppressive, began to feel like a place of healing, of stories and endurance. The road home felt lighter, laughter echoing among the trees, carrying with it the assurance that they would be okay. Moments of chaos had brought them closer together, and the memories of fear transformed into those of resilience. Jacob looked at his family love stronger than any shadow. As they packed up their campsite, the echoes of adventure and laughter filled the air, chasing away the last remnants of shadows that dared linger. They would carry the lessons learned, connected by their shared experience forever, and amid it all, Jacob knew one truth for sure: in darkness, there's always a chance for light, especially when you stand together. Now that you've experienced this thrilling conclusion, give us your thoughts. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on more mind-blowing stories. Smash that like button to show your support, it really helps us out. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories, we want to hear from you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your engagement means the world to us, and only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.